Welcome to the Story King, where every tale transforms your world. The Clay Keeper. The screaming started at 3:47 a.m. Marcus shot upright in bed, his alpha instincts already flooding his system with adrenaline before his conscious mind caught up. The sound tearing through the pack house wasn't a threat, it was worse. It was his son, again. He was down the hallway in seconds, barefoot on cold hardwood, his heart hammering against his ribs. The destruction had already begun. Through the crack in the door, he could see Ethan, 7 years old, small for his age, face twisted in anguish, hurling books against the wall with supernatural strength no child should possess. The bookshelf lay on its side. The curtains hung in tatters. Deep claw marks scored the walls like accusations. Ethan. Marcus's alpha voice rolled through the room, commanding and absolute. The boy froze mid-throw, a ceramic lamp trembling in his small hands. For one heartbeat, Marcus thought it had worked. Then Ethan's eyes met his, wild, golden, desperate, and the lamp exploded against the doorframe inches from Marcus's head. I hate it, I hate it, I hate everything. Marcus dodged the next projectile, a wooden toy box that splintered against the wall where he'd been standing. His wolf snarled beneath his skin, demanding order, demanding obedience. But this wasn't a challenge to his authority. This was his son, drowning in something Marcus couldn't fight. Ethan, stop. You don't understand. The boy's voice cracked, oscillating between human and something other. It's too loud. Everything is too loud. By the time Marcus wrestled his son into an exhausted, sobbing heap on the floor, the room looked like a war zone. Again, the 5th time this week, the 23rd time this month. And Marcus, alpha of the Clearwater Pack, victor of 3 territorial wars, had absolutely no idea how to save his own child. The pack doctor had no answers. The child psychologist in the city had suggested medications that made Ethan's eyes go glassy and dead. The pack elders muttered about bad blood, about his late wife's human weakness, about sending the boy away. Marcus had banned them all from his presence. He stood now in Ethan's doorway, newly repaired, again, watching his son sleep fitfully in the one corner that hadn't been destroyed. The boy's small chest rose and fell rapidly, even in sleep. No peace. Never any peace. You can't keep doing this alone. Marcus didn't turn. He'd sensed Kieran approaching long before the Omega spoke. I'm his father. You're exhausted. Kieran moved to stand beside him, small and unassuming in a way that made most alphas underestimate him. Marcus had learned better years ago. You've replaced the door 4 times this month. The contractors are starting to ask questions. Then I'll do it myself. Marcus. Kieran's voice was soft, but it carried a weight that made Marcus finally look at him. When's the last time you slept? When he does. That's not sustainable. Nothing about this is sustainable. The words came out harsher than Marcus intended, edged with the desperation he'd been swallowing for months. He's destroying himself. Every night, Kieran. Every single night he wakes up screaming and destroys everything he can reach. The doctors say there's nothing physically wrong. The psychologists say it's behavioral. The pack thinks he's broken, defective. His voice cracked. What kind of father can't protect his own son from himself? Kieran was quiet for a long moment, watching Ethan sleep. When he spoke, his voice carried a thoughtfulness that made Marcus's wolf settle slightly. Maybe he doesn't need protection. Maybe he needs translation. What? Has anyone asked him why he does it? Marcus stared at the Omega. He's 7. He screams that everything is too loud, that he hates everything. But have you asked him what he needs instead of demanding he stop? The question landed like a physical blow. Marcus's jaw worked silently. As an alpha, his entire existence was built on control, on commanding, on fixing through force of will. The idea of asking, of listening, felt foreign and uncomfortable and maybe that was the problem. The next morning, Marcus sat across from his son at the breakfast table, really looking at him for the first time in weeks. Ethan pushed soggy cereal around his bowl, shoulders hunched, waiting for the lecture he knew was coming. Tell me about the loudness, Marcus said quietly. Ethan's spoon stopped moving. His golden eyes flicked up, suspicious, confused. What? You say everything is too loud. Tell me what you mean. The boy's small face crumpled with frustration. I don't. It's not noise loud. It's... His hands clenched into fists on the table. It's like there's too much of everything inside me and it won't stay still and I can't make it stop and it hurts and I need to get it out but I don't know how and... Okay. Marcus reached across the table, covering his son's trembling fist with his hand. The touch seemed to ground them both. Okay, we'll figure it out. But he had no idea how. Kieran appeared at Marcus's office that afternoon with a wooden box under one arm and an expression that suggested he wouldn't be leaving without being heard. I have an idea, the Omega said without preamble. It's probably stupid, and you'll probably think I'm overstepping, but I'm going to say it anyway because watching you both tear yourselves apart is worse than risking your pride. Despite everything, Marcus felt the corner of his mouth twitch. You've never cared about my pride before. Why start now? Kieran set the box on Marcus's desk. My grandmother, human side, was a sculptor. When I was young and overwhelmed by pack dynamics, when everything felt like too much and I couldn't control any of it, she'd give me this. He opened the box to reveal blocks of gray clay, worn tools, a small spray bottle. She said some people have too much inside them for words. They need another language. Marcus stared at the clay, his wolf skeptical, his human heart desperate. You think art therapy will fix supernatural rage? I think giving him a way to externalize what he's feeling might be better than forcing him to keep it inside until he explodes. Kieran met his eyes steadily. Nothing else is working. What do you have to lose? Pride, Marcus thought. Control. The illusion that he had any idea what he was doing. Everything, Marcus said quietly. If this doesn't work, I lose everything. Then let me try, please. Kieran came to the pack house that evening with his box of clay and a patience that made Marcus's alpha nature itch with discomfort. Ethan eyed the Omega with the wariness of a child who'd learned that adults usually meant more rules, more expectations, more ways to fail. I'm not good at art, Ethan said defensively. Good, Kieran replied, settling cross-legged on the floor of Ethan's room. Neither am I. That's not what this is for. He pulled out a block of clay and began working it in his hands, not making anything in particular, just pressing and rolling and smoothing. After a moment, he offered a second block to Ethan. What am I supposed to make? Whatever the loudness feels like. Ethan stared at the clay like it might bite him. Then, slowly, he took it. His small fingers pressed into the soft material tentatively at first, then harder. He squeezed it, twisted it, slammed it against the floor. Kieran kept working his own piece, not watching, not judging. Marcus stood in the doorway, frozen. For 20 minutes, neither spoke. The only sounds were breathing and the soft slap of clay against skin, against floor, against itself. Ethan's movements grew more violent, tearing pieces apart, mashing them back together, scoring lines with his fingernails that looked like the marks on his walls. Then, gradually, the frenzy slowed. The boy's breathing evened. His movements became almost methodical, creating and destroying in smaller, more controlled cycles. When Kieran finally stood to leave, Ethan looked up at him with something like wonder. It's quieter. Yeah, Kieran said softly. Sometimes getting it out makes room for quiet. That night, for the first time in 3 months, Ethan slept until dawn. His room remained intact. It wasn't a miracle cure. The next night, the screaming started again at 2 a.m. But this time, when Marcus reached his son's room, Ethan wasn't destroying it. He was hunched over his desk, fingers working frantically at a lump of clay, tears streaming down his face but no sounds escaping. Marcus knelt beside him, watching his son's small hands create and destroy, create and destroy. The clay became a mountain, became debris, became something abstract and painful and real. Tell me about it, Marcus said quietly. It feels like fire, Ethan whispered, still working. Like everything inside is burning and I can't put it out and I'm scared I'm going to burn everyone else. Marcus's heart cracked clean through. His wolf whimpered with a pain no physical wound could match. His son wasn't broken. His son was terrified of his own power, his own intensity, his own inherited nature. Ethan, look at me. The boy's hands stilled. His eyes, so much like Marcus's own, lifted, bright with unshed tears. You're not going to burn anyone, Marcus said, pulling his son into his lap the way he hadn't since Ethan was small enough to think his father could fix anything. You're strong, so strong, and I know it feels like too much right now. I know it hurts, but that fire, that's not something to be afraid of. It's power, and we're going to teach you how to shape it instead of letting it shape you. Ethan's small body shook with sobs against Marcus's chest. What if I can't? Then we'll figure it out together. Every single day, as many times as it takes. Marcus pressed his cheek against his son's hair, breathing in his scent, letting his alpha presence wrap around the boy like a shield. You're my son, my pack, and I will never give up on you. Never. They sat like that for a long time, Marcus holding his child while Ethan's fingers slowly, methodically worked the clay. The motion seemed to ground them both. 6 weeks later, Marcus stood in Ethan's room, walls intact, furniture unbroken, and watched his son carefully add another piece to the shelf that now housed dozens of small clay sculptures. Some were smooth and peaceful, others were twisted and violent. All were necessary. Dad, Ethan looked up from his current project. Kieran says I can fire some of these in a real kiln soon. Make them permanent. Yeah, Marcus smiled. Which ones? Ethan pointed to a small figure, rough but recognizable as a man holding a child. This one. It's us. From that night you said you wouldn't give up. Marcus had to look away before his son saw the moisture in his eyes. His wolf settled contentedly, recognizing what his human heart had finally accepted. Sometimes the strongest thing an alpha could do was not command, but listen. Not fix, but hold space. Not control, but trust. I think that's a perfect choice, Marcus managed. The screaming had stopped, not because Ethan had learned to be quiet, but because he'd learned another language for the loudness. And Marcus had learned that being a father meant not just protecting his son from the world, but sometimes protecting his son from well-meaning fathers who thought they knew all the answers. In the end, Kieran's clay hadn't fixed anything, but it had translated something neither Marcus nor Ethan could articulate alone, that sometimes destruction is just creation looking for the right medium. And sometimes the bravest thing a parent can do is admit they need help, and accept it when it comes from the quietest voices. Thank you for reading with the Story King, where every ending is just a new beginning.